Well, welcome everybody to the first episode of The Anchor Leg. I'm your host, Griffin Gushman, here with my co-host,
Jaden Wyatt.
Josh Hernandez.
And Peter Mag.
Well, this is our first episode of the Anchor Leg podcast. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and tell you what our podcast is all about, who we are as people, and what you can expect from the coming episodes. So, as I said, I'm Griffin. I'm a junior here at Case Western Reserve University. I'm a distance swimmer, and from me, you're going to expect me to be the stat guy every week, coming at you with the latest news, times, results from D3 swimming. So we're going to get out here and recap it every week for you. What's going on?
Yeah, I think you'll notice a common trend as we go around and discuss what events we swim. I am also a distance freestyler, 400 IM swimmer. Like I said, Jaden Wine, I'm a junior at Case Western, originally from Mansfield, Ohio. Super excited to get this thing going and hopefully bring you guys some valuable swimming content.
Yeah, so just like everybody else here, I am a mid-D IM oriented swimmer. I dabble in the 200s of strokes. I'm a sophomore here at Case Western, so yeah, I'm from Maryland.
Peter Mag, also Case Western swimmer, focusing on distance swimming and the form I am. Junior here at Case Western Reserve, just like everyone else, and let's get started.
All right, perfect. So we're going to jump right into it here. We want to let you guys know exactly the product we're bringing you every week when we get on here. So we're going to have Jaden start off and kind of just give you our mission statement and tell you what we're all about.
Yeah, sure thing. So, as most men of our age do from time to time, last spring we got started talking, and you said, you know what, we need to make a podcast, and very quickly determined that a good value proposition for a podcast would be sort of a very deep overview of D3 swimming. D3 swimming, in all of our humble opinions, is an absolutely fantastic thing, but it is very inaccessible. So the goal for the Anchor Leg podcast is to provide everyone a deep dive into D3 swimming on a weekly basis.
Yeah, so from what you can expect on a weekly basis, we're going to come at you with the top performers of the week, the most high-profile meets, every result that you can possibly think of from the week. As always, I'm going to encourage our listeners to write in, hit us on our social media. We got Instagram, Twitter, get in our DMs. Tell us what you want to see us cover week in and week out. Any meets we missed, any top performances, because, I can only research so much week in and week out, but we're going to bring you those deep dives into D3 swimming every week, but also we don't want to let the big stories get lost in the mix. You're going to hear lots from the global scope of swimming, big meets in D1, D2. You bet they'll get covered in here every week. I'm sure a lot of you were thinking about what happened last week at the UVA Florida meet. I'd be remiss to not talk about that. Or, maybe the latest story at the FINA World Cup. That's going to make it in here too. But what we want to bring you guys is the least accessible realm of swimming, and that's Division III. So we want to make sure that you guys are hearing your name shouted out every week. We want to hear about your best times, your triumphs every week. We want to hear it, and we're going to bring it to you live.
And before we really get going, I do want to provide a absolutely huge disclaimer for the first episode. Griffin mentioned, he is the research guy, and Griffin was actually described to me by his head coach as being one of the largest swim nerds on planet Earth. However, he is also a full-time student and student athlete. So when we wanted to test the demand for this podcast and really get a first episode out, you guys get some feedback as quickly as possible. And in doing so, we decided for the first episode to focus on something we know very well as D3 men's swimmers, which is D3 men's swimming. We're going to get a little bit of depth into the women's side of things, but for the first episode, really wanted to test demand, make sure we're providing something valuable. So we're going to focus on that in the first episode. But you are mistaken if you think that we're not going to get to the women's stuff in the future as well. So please, if you're interested in that, drop us a comment, drop us a DM, and we'll get that for you guys as well.
More so, if you want to hear your name shouted out, please let us know. We'll be happy to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely, Peter. All right, so jumping right into it, let's get started. We're going to take a look at the D3 results this week, starting off with an absolutely big meet this week. We got the Akron Zips Invitational. Now, this is mostly a Division I meet. We got the Akron women out here, always a big player in the MAC. We got, Xavier University, always looking to vie for a Big East title week in and week out. But, big performer this week from Division III was the Denison men. We saw a third place finish out of 5 teams. I believe Denison was the only Division III team there. We saw some highlights from Denison, including Christian McIntyre and Lucas Conrads finish 6-7 in the 500 free, going 440 and 441, easily cracking the top 5 times in the country this year. Liam Nelson and Elijah Vinos took home a 2-4 finish in the 100 breast with a 56.6 and a 57.09 respectively. And let's not let it get lost. The Denison men were not suited up at this meet, the only team in the field not wearing suits. And Lucas Conrad is back at it again in the mile, showing us why he's one of the top distance swimmers in the country, breaking 16:30 in a Speedo to take home another top 6 finish and post one of the top times in the country this year. I mean, boys, that's a great start to the year for the Denison men, don't you think?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's great.
Swam lights out. And I'll tell you something else that I saw that I wanted to talk about at that meet. Something that we don't get a whole lot of in swimming is sort of the promotion, the height. Did you see that height video they played on the scoreboard before the beginning of that meet?
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was awesome.
And Denison's definitely setting their tone for the season. They know what they want.
Absolutely. Expect them to vie for yet another top 5 finish this year at NCAAs. We know the boys out of East Ohio, or sorry, boys out of West Ohio, all vying for a title, Kenyon and Denison. All right. So moving on, we got Calvin versus Grand Valley and Saginaw Valley State. Being a Michigander myself, it's a big interstate rivalry meet for me. We saw Calvin take a second place finish behind Grand Valley and just ahead of SVSU. Very impressive there. I've seen a D3 team take down one of the big players in Division II. Top 20 ranked Saginaw Valley losing to a Division III team. That's an impressive way to start your year. And let's not let it get lost. This wasn't just, Calvin picked up an event here and there, they really got blown out by Grand Valley. That was not what this was. There were some blistering times. Forrest Peterson dropping a 20.99 in the 50 free. First man under 21 seconds this year in Division III. Shout out Forrest. Julian Kamey throwing it down in the 100 fly. 48.6, which is just half a second off his personal best. And we're just getting started with the season. It's only October. And Calvin's A200 free relay squad of Patterson, Vlad Mullen, Corey Campbell, and Charles Platt put down the second best swim this year just behind Emory. And you know what? These boys are impressing real early in the season. I mean, like I said, Julian coming in here with a 48.6 in October is absolutely filthy. We might see him tapering down to the 47 mid to low range last year. And he's already, established himself as one of the best 100 flyers in Division III last year with the 48.0. I'm really excited to see what he could do this year. I mean, the boys at Calvin have to be looking pretty good early on this year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think to start out, I think when you think of those top 10 teams and D3, Calvin is not really what comes to mind. I mean, I think this year they're looking to take a big step forward. And I think, starting off this hot, I mean, they could end up there by the time NCAAs comes around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a thing or two about Calvin. I'm swimming at their pool. I know exactly what's going on in that program. Chris Sullivan, the assistant coach, they're always doing great things year in and year out with that crew. I know that their sprint group's going to be ready to go. We know their pedigree. They stepped it up last year in a big way and made noise in those sprint relays. I expect to see more of that this year.
Absolutely. And it's a good day if you can wake up on October 15th and know that you've been under 21 seconds of the 50 freestyle.
Absolutely. Not many people can say that. Not many. Not even D2 and D1 this early in the year. All right, moving on. We had RPI versus RIT, big rivalry out east this year, right? And we saw this interconference rivalry. We had RIT come out victorious by over 100 points over RPI, 199 to 95. And man, let's talk about Drew Shine's day for the Tigers. He won 2 individual events and contributed to 2 winning relay efforts. He and RPI's Jason Weller were the top 2 scorers of the meet. Weller took the 100 and 200 back. But let's not let that fly under the radar that Kai Louie scored a victory in the 200 free, 6th fastest time in Division III this season, 144.1 in a dual meet. I mean, it's only October and we're rounding into shape going 144s this early. I mean, we can expect a lot out of the RIT boys this year.
Absolutely.
And I mean, just looking at last year, we were trying to send a 4 medley relay to NCAAs here at Case Western. And as I recall, I believe RIT was the last team that snuck in ahead of us. So we see what you boys are up to out east. And we know that, you're going to be back at it again this year in the pool. So
Shout out. Yeah, I mean, we talk about it, everyone's in such great shape for the season. They should taper down well. It seems like every single year getting faster and faster. And he's got to be feeling all right, going 144 right now in the 2 free, as well as the other boys in their events. Man, unbelievable.
Oh, absolutely. Especially the 2 free. I feel like that's one of those events that tapering really helps quite a lot. So definitely some exciting stuff to see. Such a quick time already.
absolutely. Now we head out west to a super exciting dual meet between Trinity, Texas, and Colorado College. This was easily the most exciting meet of the week. Came down to the final event on both days. It was a 2-day dual meet on Friday. We saw Colorado College come out by just 5 points ahead of Trinity College of Texas, 124 to 119, and on Saturday, an even just as close of a result, 115 to 107. Obviously, both the scores in favor of Colorado, but guys, I mean, that is just a super exciting meet. This early in the season, just going at it, these are two very evenly matched teams.
Absolutely.
And, you know, let's shout out Edmund Davis from Colorado. He was the top swimmer of the meet on Friday, taking both the 500 and the 1,000. I mean, that's never an easy double to do, especially knowing that you got a 2-day meet ahead of you. On Saturday, we saw a great battle between Jack Hassan and Trinity's John Keefe for the top 2 scorers in the meet. Both of them won their individual events. Hassan won the 100 and 200 free, and let's not discount that 46-5 split on their relay. That's all this early in October. I mean, you know, relay starting out, we can expect this guy to taper down into the low 45, high 44 range, which is obviously elite speed at the D3 level. And, you know, shout out, like I said, John Key taking the win in 4 IM and 2 back. Great swims early this early in the season. All right, now moving on to the Kenyon College Relays, which was where we saw Mr. Meng in action this weekend out at Kenyon. It was a super fun relay style only meet. We had 5 top Division III schools there: Kenyon, Carnegie Mellon, us boys here at Case Western. Also represented there were Worcester and Ohio Wesleyan, just 5 great teams that are, I'm sure, really excited to make some noise in October here, having some fun out at a very fast pool. And, you know, Kenyon obviously took the win with 90 points. Case Western and Carnegie tied for second in both the men's and the women's, but the men's, we took 82 points, both teams, and Worcester had 50 points, followed by Ohio Wesleyan with 32. I mean, it was just a very competitive meet all around. I don't think I was watching the live stream the whole day. Didn't really see a relay that whole meet where all the teams weren't up and cheering, up and going.
Absolutely.
There was great energy that whole meet. And, you know, let's just talk about Emil Lasita here. I mean, he is an upstart name to watch this year. Case Western's own. He contributed across the board for the Spartans. I mean, logged 1 of 2 sub 23 second 50 backstrokes on the day. I mean, we know what Kenyon's Yuri Kostian is all about. He's been here before, you know, going low 140s and 2 back, you know, 47 range in the 100 back. He was 22.95, but Emil just edged him with a 22.8 early in the day. That's good for the top leadoff in the country this season in the 50 back. And I mean, you just got to think that this kid's getting rolling this early in the year. Just absolutely smashed our school record in the 100 IM on the 4x100 IM relay. Posted a 51.4. That's easily the top time in the country this year. I mean, fellas, Emil's looking huge this year. We can expect some great things out of him.
He came back from the summer, and he's a different man. I mean,
Yeah.
he's back with a vengeance this year. I think he's poised to make NCAA's.
I'm making
Many bold predictions, but I mean, we can expect to see his name a lot more popping up these coming weeks.
And definitely lights out some of that 100 IM. I was anchoring that relay, and man, he made my life so much easier. Gotta thank him.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, obviously it was a day for us to watch Emil just do his thing, throwing down some great times. But there's some other pretty noteworthy swims there. Kenyon's Marco Kurtnich, 21.22 and a 50 free from a flat start. That's always blazing this time of year. 22.2 in the 50 fly from a flat start. Both those easily the fastest flat start 50s of the day. My boy Peter over here led off the Case Western 3x500 free relay and a 4:44 in the 500. That cracks the top 10 times in the division this year in the 500. Well done, Peter.
Thank you.
And of course, we got to mention the Tartans as well. DJ Lloyd throwing down with a 20.5 split, and Christian Lanuza posting a 25.6 in the 50 breast for the Tartans. I mean, that's some crazy early speed. That 4x50 medley relay is looking pretty dirty this early in the year.
It really is. It really is unbelievable. We were talking about that 20.9 earlier. 20.5. We're talking about the energy that we saw at this meet, the excitement we saw at this meet. Man, Case Western, we tied Carnegie Mellon in both sides of the coin yesterday. But I'm telling you what, if we see a 20.5 in that relay come our dual meet, things are going to get ugly.
Yeah.
Peter, I got to ask you, man, I'm going to give you a little opportunity to brag. Your 500 freestyle with that top 10 time. Tell me, what number event was that for you on the day?
That was my 4th swim of the day. That was that. The relays, I'll tell you right now, the energy there is really what keeps you going. They're all really fast, rapid fire going right at you. Only about 2 heats every event. You know, this meet took maybe a total of 3.5 hours to 4 hours. I mean, there's a lot of rapid fire swimming, especially for teams that didn't bring a lot of people, because we split squads. You know, we'll talk about this later, but the Overland Invite is where my boys went to. there's just a lot of quick swimming. It's really impressive. These times you got to keep in mind, unsuited, in a relay setting, everyone at this meet is swimming a lot, especially not only during this meet but during practice too. So these times you gotta really understand how much people are gonna taper down from these.
And before we move on for this meetup, I got to give out one more shout out to my boy Emil. I mean, we're not surprised given what's going on. We saw him in the weight room all spring, but oh my goodness, he's a name to watch this upcoming season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, moving on, we got another great meet out east. Drew from New Jersey versus Catholic University from DC. I mean, just another great showdown between two landmark conference teams. We saw Drew come out on top, 167 to 126. But there were some great individual swims here. Nick Hania-Widdell led the Rangers with 3 individual victories in the 1500 freestyle and 200 IM. I mean, talk about showing some range there, some sprint free and some sprint IM. Great swims there. From Catholic, we saw Sean Kelty post a 10-minute 1,000, which is great this time of year. Good for 8th fastest in the country. So we can see that distance group's really rounded into shape if we're throwing down 10-minute flat 1,000s this time of year. And shout out Nathan Ober, placing first the 58-300 breast. That's pretty speedy for this time of year as well. That's a guy that we can definitely expect to see to taper down 55 high, 56 low range come February. So really excited to see it. Now, moving on to another interesting format and meet. This is where Josh, Jaden, and I were this weekend. The Oberlin Early Invite, obviously hosted by Oberlin College. So if any of you guys are familiar with Last Chance Invitationals, this is exactly how this meet was structured. Rolled in there on Friday, got our Friday events done at night. Saturday morning, came back, did the usual day 2 events, and Saturday night we stayed at the pool all day, came back and did the day 3 events. So when you're looking at a mid-season invitational, something like that, that's the order that we ran for this meet. We had some great D3 teams there. Oberlin and Case Western obviously were deadlocked in a great battle for first on both the men's and the women's side. I got to give my boy Josh right here a shout out for taking first in all 4 of his individual events. A clean sweep of the 100, 200, 400 IM and the 200 fly. But I mean, boys, the Oberlin distance group, man, really rounded into shape early. My guy Miguel, shout out Miguel Sawadi from Oberlin. Great swims. That was a great battle. You and Shaheen were throwing down this weekend. I'd be remiss not to mention Shaheen, a Morocco native. Just his first short course meet ever was throwing down some great times.
I'm glad to hear that. So we were talking to the boys at Oberlin, and they were telling us he had came over and he was swimming yards for the first time in his life. He had never had any experience in the short course yards format, only swam meters his entire life. And to come in like that and throw down the times he had in the racing format he had literally never done before is just extremely impressive. And I think we can expect to see some crazy fast times with him taper down.
I'd love to see the potential of this man. Once he gets used to the short course format, I know that he's gonna be a name to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was an electric finish in 500 between Miguel and Shaheen, 443.6 and 443.7 respectively. I mean, good for the 5th fastest swims in the country this year in that event. And we saw Shaheen back in action cracking 16:30. We said that's that magical mark in a speedo. If you're not suited up and you're cracking minute pace this early in the season, we know that you're a contender to make that NCAA cut in the individual 1650. So I'm really excited to see what he has to throw down at the Oberlin midseason invite. Some other great swims here. We saw Michael Bolins post the 4th fastest 200 backstroke in Division 3 this season from Case Western, going to 153 on the last day of an absolutely grueling meet. It was a great swim.
And keep in mind we were swimming relays too, so this was probably going on his 5th or 6th swim of the meet, and he just threw that down, and it was very impressive.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, looking at practice, Michael Bolins really works for it. He's definitely building up that he's in shape. He's in shape enough to handle such a tough lineup, and keep it up. Good for you.
Yeah, nothing else to say. Shout out Michael Bolins. He's got elite underwaters that you're going to want to watch the rest of this season.
Absolutely. And not to sit here and toot my own horn, but I picked up an individual victory as well, going 144.8 in the 2 free.
Mm-hmm.
Good for 10th fastest in the division this year. So I'm trying out the 2 free this year, moving down from the 4 IM. So distance boy over here is going to try and give you a little speed this season. So we're going to see how that works out.
He's getting quicker. Nothing else to say. Shout out to the Oberlin boys. Absolutely electric swims across the board, especially from those 2. And they're definitely going to be a team to watch come later this season.
And I think the 4 of us can all say we're all very much looking forward to having them come over at the second half of this season for our dual meet. I think we're all looking forward to seeing what they can throw down at the end of the season.
Absolutely. And Case Western came out on top. top in the overall men's team scores with 1,053 points. But we got to give a shout out to Overland in a championship meet format in which they had far less swimmers than us. They put up a good battle, posting 846 points. So shout out to the boys from Overland. And in our final meet of the week, obviously a huge matchup between Emory and Georgia Tech, an in-state rivalry where, we know what Emory's pedigree is. We know what they're all about. The defending national champions are taking down one of the best teams in the ACC. Obviously, we can't expect Emory to win every dual meet, right? If they were, I don't think they'd be Division III. But they did very well to hold their own against this top D1 squad. I mean, we saw several of the nation's top times. And I mean, guys, let's just sit down and talk about Crow Thorson, man. What a year he is having.
Unbelievable.
Incredible.
I mean, I didn't expect to see any of these times this early in the season. We posted 45.92 in the 100 free. Shout out Crow. That's the top time in the year. Back in action, runner up in the 200 IM with a 151.7. That's the top 200 IM in the country by almost 3 seconds. Finishing just ahead of his brother, freshman McKee Thorson, just could not be outdone by his older brother Crow. Had to come back in the individual 200 fly, posting a 150.21. That's pace in the division this year. So very early in the season to see that low 150 swim. I know McKee's looking to go, give Frank Applebaum a challenge when he tapers down at the end of this year, the reigning Division III champion and record holder. So I see you, McKee, putting these freshmen from Emory on the map. And, I'd be remiss, like I said, I got to mention my boy Adam Braunschweig leading off the Emory 4x100 medley relay, scorching a 50.300 back, almost cracking 50 seconds this early in the season. Very, very impressive stuff. And finally, shout out to Will Cohn, posting the nation's top 200 back, almost cracking a minute 50 seconds with a 150.09. So, I mean, boys, we knew what Emory was about, but they're coming out this year and showing us again why they're ranked number one in the early season polls.
Every time we talk about Emory, what do we say? Of course, man, Emory is just absolutely swimming lights out. But every single time, man, they continue to surprise. They continue to set expectations. Shout out to the Emory swimmers. I think they swam lights out against Georgia Tech today. Could not have been a relaxed dual meet, but shout out to them. They showed up.
Yeah, and I mean, to see the pushing the 150 mark in the 200 strokes, being the 2 fly and the 2 back. I mean, this early in the season, in a dual meet format, that is just ridiculously fast. And I mean, I think we can expect to see some crazy fast 200s from those guys this year.
I feel like if any Division III team could take on a beast in Division I, it'd be Emory. They're the ones who rose to the challenge, and good job to you guys.
Absolutely. And, I want to just give a quick note to our listeners. Please, please, please write in our DMs and our socials any meets or times that we missed that you guys want to hear about. I know just from a quick glance on Swim Club, there were 20, 30 meets in Division III this week, and I did my best to highlight the ones that were on top, those elite dual meet performances. Also dig a little bit deeper. We got East Coast, West Coast meets represented here. But like I said, please shout me out, mention me in the comments saying what you want to hear next week. DM me with any meets or times that we missed, and we'll be sure to hit them next week. And so just wanted to run through and give a recap of what the top times in Division III are as of this week. Our editor, Peter, here is going to overlay them on the screen for everybody to see super conveniently. But for now, I mean, we can look at Crow Thorson. I mean, he's taken the top time in the 100, 200, 500 free, as well as the 200 and 400 IM. As we mentioned, Emil has posted 2 of the top times this year in the 50 back on a relay leadoff, as well as the 100 IM. We got Julie and Kamey, shout out Calvin. They've got 2 top times in the 50 free and 100 fly. We got Jake Meyer from Emory. Last week against Queens was throwing it down, posted the top 2 breaststroke times in the country with a 55.11 and 202.97. We know exactly who Jake is. He's back to defend his NCAA crown in the breaststrokes from last year. Really excited to see him going. Some other results from that Emory Queens meet that bear mentioning: Crow throwing down a 139.5 2 free and a 435.5 in the 500. Those both marked the top time in Division III this year, as well as Zhao from Emory. I'm totally going to butcher your name, so I'm just going to say Zhao Nas. That's all I can say there. He threw down a great mile, posting a 16.23. And Daniel Snyder from Rhodes, transferred to Rhodes this year, elite swimmer. I'm sure he's looking to go to the D3 route and really better his times. 9:42 in the 1,000 this early in the year. Peter knows how hard it is going those low 9:40, high 9:30 times this early in the season. So, shout out Daniel. That's a great early season time.
Very impressive.
All right, so just to segue into our next segment, we promised you guys that outside of just Division III times, we'd take a look at the broader scope of swimming as a whole this week. And obviously, we got a fair amount to cover, Obviously, segueing right from these great results in yards to the meters format. We had the third stop, or sorry, excuse me, the second stop of the World Cup circuit in Athens, Greece. You know, everybody loves swimming in that pool. It's the site of the 2004 Athens Olympics. That's a fast pool. We know what's going on there. Site of several world records from Michael Phelps in 2004. And, you know, boys, we could see that the pool held up to its fast pedigree. We saw Michael Andrew and Matt Sates continue their success. They were both firing on all cylinders early in the World Cup tour. Sates even said in an interview he's swimming on a partially fractured wrist. I mean, that's just impressive. Can you guys imagine swimming a 2 fly, 4 IM long course?
No, absolutely not.
I can barely do it normally.
Yeah. So,
A great needed to pull something like that off is definitely insane.
Yeah, shout out, shout out.
yeah, and Michael Andrew, man, continues to dominate those 50s of stroke in the individual 50 free, cracking 22 seconds on the World Cup stop. You know, the three of us and Peter, obviously, you know, but especially the three of us, we were just talking the other day. We see a lot of reels from Michael Andrew on Instagram, what he's doing with his dad, Peter, training early in the season. I see they've switched up their training methods a lot. You know, it's really inspirational seeing somebody who's as great as Michael Andrew, you know, taking a loss earlier this summer, missing the world championship team, and, you know, getting in the lab with his dad, his coach, and adjusting his training. I mean, that just shows you even the great ones, they've always got room to improve. So, you know, shout out Michael Andrew. He's making some changes that really seem to be paying like some
Yeah.
great dividends.
And I think if Michael Andrew decides to stick with this new training and pick up maybe the 200 IM again, we'll see. I think he's going to be back with a vengeance come the Olympics next year. And, you know, I think he could really be a true contender for the 2 IM if he can really just bring together that last 50.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, moving on, we got Kaylee McEwen on the women's side. I mean, looking as impressive as ever. She's sending out a warning shot to Reagan Smith, you know, saying, I'm here, you know, come get me in the backstrokes, almost cracking 27 seconds this early in the season, almost becoming the second person under that 27-second barrier, approaching the world record that, you know, currently stands at 26:96. So, you know, I would not be surprised when we get to Budapest on the last stop of this World Cup tour if she's vying to break those world records in the 1500 back. So, you know, shout out Kaylee, shout out to the Australian women, man. These past 2 years have looked like an absolute dominant force, and they're going to come into Paris, you know, looking to topple over the American women. So, as always, we're excited to see that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think even this past Worlds, I think we got a great glimpse at like the Australian team as a whole. I mean, the men's side and the women's side, I think they're coming for the U.S. and I think they want it bad. I mean, we saw all the drama on Twitter and all that, the interviews. I mean, I think that's just a great rivalry that's just it's reigniting, I guess, because we kind of had a lull there for a couple of years in the tens where the U.S. kind of dominated that rivalry. But I think the Aussies are back and they are better than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, heading back to Asia, we got to talk about Chin Hai-Yang. I mean, this man has been on an absolutely unstoppable run this summer between world championships where we really saw him break out, World University Games, Asia Games, and now he's back terrorizing the World Cup tour. I mean,
Man,
and you know what gets me the most is when I hear people say like, "Oh man, this guy came out of nowhere, man. Like I've never even heard of Chin Hai-Yang." You know, do some research about Chin. I mean, he is an absolute beast. A guy that was 410 in the long course 400 IM, moving to the sprint breaststrokes. I mean, we see he's got that elite combination of endurance, speed, strength, technique. I mean, he's out here and he's trying to prove why he's the best breaststroker in the world right
no,
now.
absolutely. The Chinese team, their breaststrokes on point. I'll tell you right now. I used to live there for 7 years. Their breaststroke, they'll do you right. I mean, definitely a force to be reckoned with this coming few years.
Yeah, and you know, as Chin zeroes in on that world record held by Adam Peaty in the 100 breast, you know, we continue to see Peaty get back to form. It's really exciting seeing his journey back to the sport, posting another 26 plus 50 breaststroke this year. I mean, obviously Chin came out victorious, but we sort of expected to see that, you know, as Adam Peaty continues to close that gap. That's definitely a matchup that we're looking towards in 2024. Seeing Adam Peaty potentially back to form versus the upstart Chin Hai-Yang looking to break his records.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think the 100 breast is like one of, if not the marquee event on the men's side coming into this next Olympics. I mean, it's going to be extremely competitive, and I think if Adam Peaty gets back to where he was at and Chin Hai-Yang's pushing him, I mean, it's going to be a great race. I mean, it like almost as great as, well, it didn't live up to it. I think the hype behind the women's 400 this past summer, it's going to be equivalent to that. I think it's going to be a great race.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Another unexpected result from the World Cup. We got Cody Simpson coming through, you know, with a great performance this weekend, finally breaking through, getting on that international podium, posting a 51.88 100 fly, good for silver medal. at the Athens World Cup, tying with Michael Andrew. And I mean, what a great performance from Simpson, who, has just had one of the more interesting swimming careers that we've ever seen.
Absolutely. We got to shout out to Cody Simpson. I mean, he's bringing so much credibility and attention to the sport, just going the celebrity route, after having so much swimming talent, then saying, you know what, I'm going to come back and I'm going to rock the swimming world. Shout out to him, bringing a lot of attention and bringing a lot of excitement to the sport.
Yeah, that especially hits close to home because the whole point of us starting this podcast is also to bring more attention to the sport, right? I mean, way to go, Cody. I mean, thank you for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about a guy that, is so famous, like over 5 million Instagram followers, used to date Miley Cyrus. I mean, that's a guy that's like a household name. That's exactly what swimming needs right now. And to not only be a household name, but I mean, this isn't like one of the Paul brothers boxing. This is a guy that's out there actually contributing to the sport of swimming on a very high level and, posting great times. I'd expect him to contend for that second spot on the Australia roster next year.
Absolutely, yes.
And moving on, we got the opening year College Swim Coaches Association of America, CSCA polls. We touched on this a little bit already. Emory men continuing their run of dominance in Division III, and the Kenyon women looking to do the same.
No surprise at all.
Yeah, no surprise to see those two teams top in the rankings. And in a similar vein, University of Virginia women top in the Division I polls. We know exactly what they're about. We know what Todd DeSorbo does. Great training program out there in Virginia. We certainly expect them to have another dominant run this year. But, expectedly or unexpectedly, you decide Arizona State tops the men's dual meet rankings this early in the season. Obviously they went undefeated last year, defeated Cal in the Pac-12 Conference Championship. But, guys, is this the year that we finally see a Bob Bowman team reach the promised land in Division I? I mean, people forget he was at Michigan all those years. They had some great runs, but never a championship. Can he get it done? Beating Dave Durden and Cal this year?
I mean, it's really looking like this is the year. I mean,
Right.
they're coming in hot. They were so close last year to reaching that goal. And I mean, I think everybody on that team, I mean, Peter can attest, he has a personal connection, but I think everybody there at ASU is just ready to make that happen. And I think that's their main goal going into this year. So I think if there's any time to do it, it's now.
They got a great chance, but I mean, don't sleep on Cal either. The new recruits and that depth, man, they're still going to be a serious contender, and they're going to make it difficult for
Absolutely.
ASU.
So I just want to let the listeners know here, like when you look at ASU, it's really easy to just look at Leon Marchand and say, hey, like, wow, ASU is Leon Marchand, but make sure you ain't sleeping on the rest of the team because the ASU guys, they really want this win. So keep a lookout for them.
And shout out to Peter's boy. Peter, shout out your boy.
And if you're listening, I mean, hey, come talk to us. If you want us to talk about anything on the show, feel free. And if you want to join, also let me know.
Absolutely. And moving on to the Division II polls, we got, the defending national champions, no surprise on both the men's and women's side, stay at the top. We got the UND men who had an absolute dominant run this year. And, while we're talking about dominant runs, the Nova Southeastern women coming off a year where they won 11 events at Division II national championships. I mean, is there any chance that either one of those teams get toppled this year? I mean, we know that Colorado Mesa, Drury, those are always your classic threats in Division II, but I don't know if I can see anybody taking down either of those
I
teams.
mean,
this
these
year.
teams are just so dominant. And I mean, they showed it last year at NCAAs. It's hard to really imagine anybody could, an upstart team coming and, disrupting things up there.
Absolutely. And, like we said before, we want to hear from you guys. Any D2 swimmers, anything like that you want to get shout out on the podcast. I know everybody wants to cover D1 swimming, but D3 and D2, we're like this, looking to get some more coverage out there this year. So D2 swimmers, shout me out, hit my DMs. We want to hear from you guys too.
At Anchor Like Pod on Twitter, tweet at us.
Yeah.
Let us know.
And moving on to the non-Division III meet of the week, we saw an absolutely electric showdown between the University of Florida and the UVA. Like we said, the UVA women were back at it again in the pool. We saw Gretchen Walsh post one of the fastest 100 freestyles ever in a dual meet at a time of 46.9. I mean, that's
Insane.
Yeah, I mean, probably faster than any of the four of us could go in a dual meet right now, if we're being brutally honest.
Maybe if you tie me to a jet ski, I can maybe move that fast. Otherwise, shout out her. She swam lights out.
Yeah, but the Florida men were equally determined to make it an impression early on in the year, posted 16 for 16 victories in this meet. It was a clean sweep of the University of Virginia men, who, I mean, while we're on this topic, are definitely one of the more up-and-coming teams in the ACC. So that's no small feat for the University of Florida to just.
Virginia's no pushover. It's very impressive that Florida managed to sweep them. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely something I didn't see coming.
Yeah, for sure. And, moving on from there, obviously the big headline of this meet was this showdown between these two elite programs. But on the pro side of things, some of these college meets, we like to see the pros get up and get racing. We saw Caleb Dressel back in action, swimming a 200 short course freestyle. Not something we see him do it very often, but he's paving this comeback trail in blood, posting at 134.9, 200 free, where he negative split the race. I mean, is Caleb Dressel back?
Caleb Dressel's back. I'll say it right now.
What did he think?
22, 24, 23, 23. Absolutely unbelievable. And it is fantastically exciting to see him swimming like that again.
No, it really is exciting because I remember I was at the Atlantic Classic earlier this year, and I got to see Caleb Dressel, come back into the career, and it just didn't feel right seeing him in such a state. It's just very, very exciting. I'm so happy to see him back in action. It's just
Yeah, and I think, the world and USA Swimming missed him sorely. Not having Caleb Dressel at an Olympics or Worlds is a miss. I mean, he's a big leader for Team USA, and I think a lot of these young guys and girls, they can look up to him come this Olympic year, and I think he can step up and be a real leader for Team USA.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So pivoting it back to D3, please, we want to hear from you guys. We're looking to be a podcast that really gets the word out about this sport, especially at the D3 level. So please, any big stories, any big meets you guys have going on, send us a DM, Instagram, Twitter. Please let us know about what you got going on.
And we're going to tag our own socials right here. Our editor, Peter, will get us right. If you guys want to hit us directly in our DM, shout out something on the podcast, we'd be more than happy to interface with you guys. Anybody that has any special guests, special announcements they want us to put on the podcast, we want to hear from you guys. This is just as much about the listeners as this is about us four hosts. And we want to bring swimming to you in the most accessible, exciting, entertaining format.
And also, if you guys found this to be valuable, if you found this insight, this little overview of what was going on, please let us know so we can keep this up. And also, if you found it valuable and you want to hear about the women's side of the coin too, please, please, please let us know so we can get that done for you. We really want to see what the market looks like, what sort of demand for something like this is out there. So please allow us to validate that. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you're rocking with it.
And furthermore, if there's any other topics you want us to cover, like how to be a better athlete, swimming practices, anything else, feel free to let us know. We'd love to include it in the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be back every week. We're going to be covering the biggest meets in Division 3. So to tease the coming weeks, I know we got some epic showdowns coming up. We're traveling on the road to Ohio Wesleyan next week. That's always a fun meet. Anytime we got, one of the local Division 3 schools in Ohio, we know it's going to be a great showdown. We want to hear from you guys. Hit us with some great meets this upcoming week. Hit us with some interesting times, event orders.
Stories.
Yeah.
Storylines. If something interesting happens in a meet, let's say someone suits up and throws down a nice time, or someone isn't suited up and throws down a nice time, let us know.
Absolutely. And we want to just come out here and say right off the bat, thank you to any of our listeners. We want this to be just as much about you guys as it is about us. We want to connect with you guys, and we just appreciate you so much for tuning into the first episode of The Anchor Leg.
And also, if you're watching this show, you know somebody, a fellow D3 swimmer that got shouted out, tag them. We want to get the word out. And more importantly, we want to celebrate people that are out here doing great things in D3. So make sure they get their eyes on this too. Thank you so much. If you're watching this right now, you're the best. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I think that's going to wrap up our first episode of The Anchor Leg podcast, and we're signing off.